Okay, so from last week, we saw what a model is. We realized that it has a class that contains a constant. It also has a class that contains a subsession. It has a class by name group. And lastly, it has a class by name player. Out of these four classes, the most important classes that we used happens to be that of the constant and that of the player. In terms of the group, because our app is not a group-based app, we had to skip it. So that was okay. So we passed over the group and we passed over the subsession. So these two subclasses, we didn't pay attention to them. Now, in terms of the constant, just by way of reminder, we indicated that within a constant, these are things that doesn't change. So these are stuff that are already given. You as a developer have your parameters set already. So for instance, your name, it wouldn't change regardless of whoever is playing this game, it still remains you. The number of round or the name of round, it doesn't change. The name that you have in your Heroku or the nature of it appearing in the web interface wouldn't change. So these are constants that we saw. So today we try as much as possible to build more on these constants and see how they work. Now we also went ahead to look at the player, which we found to be very interesting because here we realized that this is where the individual will have to come in and give us a couple of information that we might need in terms of his name, in terms of the email address and what's not. And based on what we did last week, we realized that a name is a string and email address are also strings. So these guys here are strings. So for the first meeting, things happen to be pretty much string based in terms of the information needed. And we also spent some time trying to look at whether the individual should come in and give us an information. Is it important for the person to give us his email address? If it is indeed relevant, then there's a need for us to modify this inner space. So today we'll look at different aspects of this inner space in terms of numbers, so just keep an eye on that. In terms of the name, for instance, if we don't necessarily need any if there's no compulsion as to whether the person should give us his name or not, we might also come in here and modify it. So this was the first part of the Python file that you see when you run your PowerShell to get your files. Then we went ahead to look at the idea of pages. Remember, the models basically has the database. These are the most important things in terms of the name and then the email address. Now, this will be transferred straight to these pages because as we pointed out from last week, pages are the sequence at which we expect the pages to appear to the person, as well as what we expect the person to give us in each and every page. So from page 1, or with our introduction page, we realized that we only wanted the person to give us his email address as well as his contact. So this was just basic in terms of the information needed. Then we lastly went ahead to see how the transfer of information from models to pages can be seen on the HTML. And remember, HTML happens to be very important in this case because that's what we see on our interface in case we open our browser. So HTML, as I pointed out last week, is very easy to understand. So we wouldn't have to spend much time compared to issues like Python. But one or two things that you have to keep an eye on when you open your HTML is, first, what do you need to be transferred to your HTML? So the first page contains the introduction page. It contains the name of the person and then the email address. So when I come here and I open the HTML for the introduction, then there's a need for me to run this particular line of code. This is very, very important. This is more or less like coming from Django. Here we have the name that's needed. but there's a need for us to specify it as well, whether it's a player or is a constant or whatever. So for now, because it happens to be a player, specifically from this side, we have to specify that this is player dot, then the name of the form field that we need. Now the email address is also coming from, I believe, it's also coming from the players when you open this guy. So the email address also comes from this side. So when you come to your HTML, you also have to specify that this is also coming from a player. So this guy has been given to us. This guy has been given to us. And then we run a very simple oTree dev server to see the outcome of it. And when you do that, it will give you a special link. You just have to click on the link and put it straight out to this guy here, and it will start running. So this is what we did from last week. Now I'm going to start this week by introducing an additional page. So we are going to go stepwise as we promised. So the new page we need to bring in here is what I call a decision page. And what does it do? It's basically a page where if you happen to try the app that I showed you guys on Monday, remember we asked an individual to give us his decision whether he would like to go with a fixed decision in terms of his income or he would like to go with random. So we saw that page. What I'm trying to do here is, can we, given what we did from last week, from this page, can we transfer the knowledge in introducing in this additional page? So I'm going to go through this additional page and I'll ask you guys to get a third page. That will be just based on your understanding. Try it. If you have issues, you let me know. So just by way of a refresher, I'm going to add a new page. It's for sure going to be coming from the player because he's going to give me an indication as to what he wants, whether he wants to go with the fixed or he wants to go with random. So let's start from the basis again. Whenever you want to get a new database or whenever you want to get a new input, we start from the models. So I start from the models. I'm going to add a new form to this model. So remember, this decision is coming from a player, so it has to be a player. So I'm going to put a player here. And I'm going to give it a special name, just like the name that I gave in terms of the consent and in terms of the email address. I'm just going to give it a special name, which I will call decision 1. And instead of it being a string field, I'll come back and explain what a char field means. There are going to be several fields. Hopefully, I'll take you guys to the board and explain what each and every field means. Here, instead of it being a string, this is just going to be a true or false question. So we call it a char field. Either you go with a random payment or you go with a fixed payment. So this happens to be choices. If this is how it will appear in terms of the individual playing using the app, he will see random or he will see a fixed amount. You might want to change this name. It wouldn't matter. The most important thing here is just make sure that this guy here that you call decision 1 is consistent across board. So here, the variable's name, this is not necessarily interesting. You can change it to whatever name that you like to give it. It doesn't really matter. And this widget just basically gives us more or less like a circle where you just indicate whether you go with yes or no, just like what we saw in the app. So this is a bit of an extension based on what we did on Monday in terms of the models.char field. This is no more a string where you see a box and you just type in. This is just going to be a true or false input where the person will come in and give us his decision. So given that we've identified that this guy here is is decision _1, then we go to the pages, just like the way we transferred the name and email to the pages. We are now going to transfer the decision 1 from the models straight to the pages. So I create a new page name. that I call decision one, and it's going to be a page. Remember, as we said, it's going to come from the player. Now, this is where I would like you guys to pay attention. Given the fact that we call it decision one in the models, we for sure have to come and put in decision one here. If you use the name, if you go with what we did last week, we gave it name, initials, consents in the models. So when we come here in the page, it has to be consistent. This guy is email underscore consent here in the, sorry, let me see whether someone is joining in. Okay. In the models, so when you come to the pages, it has to be email underscore consent as well. So just keep track of the names that you give as you develop your pages. So we've now transferred from models to pages. Now, what do we need to do next? What we need to do next is get everything now into our HTML for the individual to see what's going on. So initially, when you use your oTree in terms of your PowerShell to generate your templates, there are just going to be two templates in terms of my page and results. Now, what you can do here to add a page is just right click on it, type on click on new, go down to HTML, click on HTML. Now give it a name. Give this new HTML file a name. This is very important. The name that you give here is very important. It's not supposed to be arbitrary. It has to be consistent with the name that you give it in the pages. So here we gave it decision one. So you have to come here and then give it decision one as well. I've already done it. So when you happen to see this video, I've already done my decision one already here. So you just type decision one and you click OK. When you click OK, it will just show up. Okay, so let me decide the situation where I give it a new name, which is decision two, and I just click on it. You see a new HTML file showing up with decision two on top of it, and it has everything ready for you. You can give it a title, you can give it a body and whatnot. So for the sake of this class, I'll try and give you guys a consistent template. Yeah, so my template is just going to be like this. So this is my decision one template. So this guy here now becomes my decision one template. And anything that we see here is going to be pretty much important, especially this line of code. Remember this line of code that I said mostly comes from Django. This is where you have the form field, right? This is where you tell the HTML, this is coming from player dot decision one, because when you go to the models, it falls under player. And again, if you go to the pages, it falls under player. So when you come in here to introduce your new form field, this particular line of code, which is line 20, the most important code, just make sure you have the player dot, then the special name that you gave back there, which is decision one, which is here, should be transferred straight out to this side. Then you can just give it a label. What do you want the individual to see? You might want to indicate that I would like the individual to see something like, please make your decision, which is very simple. Or you might want to type in something very sophisticated in terms of saying that, please, this is the first decision that you have to make. So give me your input, something very simple. Quite apart from that, the next most important thing that I would like you guys to pay attention to is this guy here. So when you look at the app that we discussed last week, on Monday, you realize that I was trying to make it as interactive as possible. That is to say, when the individual gave us his name back here, the individual gave us his name to be Farouk. I would like the individual to see his name on each and every page as he plays his game. So how do I do that? It's very simple. When you come to the template, just type in player, because the individual is the one giving us the information. So it's a player field, consistent with this guy here. It's player. So you type in player, then you dot basically the name initials constant, which is consistent with what you gave here. So this should be important if you want to see what the individual wants to see in terms of his name. Now, the final thing here is you have to have double brackets or curly signs. Open it and end it with curly signs as well. I want the individual to see his name once again, the same thing. I can repeat it here. He will see his name. There's not going to be any issue here. So this is what I would like you guys to pay attention to as we develop this guy, okay, as we develop this next page. So if you are able to start from here, which is your decision 1, then transfer it to your pages, then finally add a new template, which is your HTML template, and make sure that this guy is here in addition to the player.name consent. Then you can go back to your PowerShell, then click on, just type oTree dev server again. What it does here is it tends to reformulate what you just did, because you added a new form field before, because you added a new page. By typing oTree dev server, you now have the new page added to your app, right? Then when you do that, this guy should show up. So you click on it and you just go to any web interface. Either you are using Mozilla or either you happen to use, I believe, Google. So you type in this guy. From last week. We only had one page. So let me see what comes out of this by just new addition. So last week we had this introduction page, and let's take the situation where I type my name, Farouk Abdul-Salam, again, and type my email address. And let's see what comes out of it by this addition. So I go to the next page. So now we have this new page added. And how does it look? You can see that the name has been transferred from page 1, which is the introduction page, to the decision page, which is a page 2. And where do we see this guy? You can see this guy here. This is the player.name initial consent. This is the name that you gave, so it is appearing here. And the next line, which is please make a decision, is the same thing that you see here. So the next line, which is please make a decision, is what you see here. Now you can see that the name is repeating itself again, and that's consistent because we gave it twice, right? So it's here as well with a new color, which is blue and all that. So I come back here. If I go to this interface, you realize that the name is here. And you can see that the question has been popped up. And how do we see that? This is where we see the question. You can clearly see that the question says that, where is it? Will you prefer a fixed amount or a random amount, right? Which is just this guy here. So this is the question that we gave it. So this shouldn't be much of a headache in terms of adding this new page. And again, as I pointed out earlier, in terms of the models, what the individual will see is basically what you typed. So you type random here and you type fixed here. So in terms of the decision that the individual is going to make, the individual is going to see the random, which is the first one, and he will also see the fixed, which is the second one, right? So we've now added a new page, which does everything for us in terms of the decision that the individual is interested in giving. Now I'd like to pause here and welcome questions. If there happen to be any questions in the room, feel free to either raise your hand and talk by the mic, or if you don't feel like talking without the mic, you might want to just type in and Raymond will just read it out. Is there anyone with any question in there?
Yes, one person's asking, what did you modify in pages.py?
Exactly. So what did I modify in pages.py? What I modified was the addition of this additional page, right? This is the page that we needed. We needed this new decision page, right? So initially from last week, we only had one page, which was the introduction page. Today, we added a decision page. So in addition to the introduction page, we now have the decision page following up the introduction page. And how should it look like? It should just look like what we did from last week. In terms of the form field, we only need one information from the individual. That's why we had only decision one. In terms of the form model, it is a player, because here it's going to give us an input or an attribute, or whatever you might want to call it in terms of the player's input. Is that okay, Mukaram? Is that okay? The questionnaire. Okay. So if there is Muntakim, if there's anyone with any additional question, please let me know. Raymond, questions?
No questions in the chat yet.
Good. Now, what I would like us to do is to do something really, really simple. Let's go back to this template. Because we happen to find ourselves here, let's go back to this template and see how the transfer of data can be given from one side to the other. Now, instead of saying that we would like to see the individual's name, why not say that give the player an indication as to who developed this app, right? So instead of transferring name, I'm interested in transferring the one who developed this app. Then how can I transfer this information from models to the HTML for the individuals to see? Now, this is very simple. Because the person who developed the app happens to be a constant, so regardless of the page that you find yourself, it's still going to be Farouk. I'm the one who developed this app, so it's not going to change. So because this is the nature of the developer, he falls under constants. So when I'm interested in transferring information from one page onto the other, and it happens to be a constant, then instead of writing player here, I first of all make that change. I put in constants here, because that's where the information will be coming from. Now, remember, it's now constant dot the name of the developer. So I go back here, I copy this guy, I come here, and I put it here. And I paste it here. So I now have this guy here. Instead of saying that the person should make a decision, I'll say that Farouk developed this app. I save it. Now let's see whether what we have done here in terms of the changes is going to work. So if you want to see the changes, whether it's working or not, you have to most likely go to PowerShell, type oTree dev server, get the new link, and start playing again. Copy it, paste it, and see what's going on. That's the standard in terms of you making any change with regards to your app. But when the change is coming from templates, it's most likely that you don't necessarily need to go again and start changing. When the change is coming from the models, then you for sure have to go to your PowerShell, press Ctrl+C, start oTree dev server again, and see all the changes, because this is the most important stuff here, the models, because it contains your database. So anytime you change something, anytime you change something in it, your database will tend to change. So you have to go and change, you have to start again and see all the changes. But when you change something in your HTML, it's most likely that you don't necessarily have to start from the scratch in terms of your oTree dev server. What you can do here is you can go to where you happen to find yourself in terms of your web interface, either Google or Mozilla or whatever. Then you can try as much as possible to refresh the page. So now you can see that by refreshing the page, you see that Farouk is appearing here. And why is Farouk appearing here? It's very simple, because I gave it constant.name developer, and name developer is Farouk. And when name developer falls under constant, it's just gonna give me Farouk. So I've now transferred the data from the constant, from the models straight out to the HTML without asking for the player's information. So that's how to transfer constants to your HTML. And this is how to transfer player to your HTML. It's most likely you might also transfer group to your HTML if you have a group app and what's not. Now I'd like to stop here and ask questions if anyone has any. Questions? Questions? Raymond, is there anyone with any question in there?
None yet.
If there are no questions, then I'm happy to go a step further. So what I would like you guys to do here is, why not try adding a new page, call it decision 2, with the same idea, and see whether you can do it by yourself without any difficulty. If you can, then we've made some progress. If you still have issues, then feel free to contact me and we can see where the problem is coming from. So that will be what you might want to do during the break, the 5 minutes break or the 10 minutes break. Then we will look at something new. Now, if everyone is okay with this, then I can go one step further and introduce in a new idea here. And this idea is what we introduced on our first day. And that happens to be, how do we tend to send our app for everyone to play? Because as of now, whenever I run oTree dev server, I can only see the results and everything on my computer. I cannot send the link to you to try it. I cannot send the link to someone in Ghana to try it. And it means whatever I've done is just nothing. It's cost 90, it's just 0. So what I'm going to introduce in here is the idea of we deploying our app. And by deploying our app, I mean trying to send our app out for everyone to use. So this might be a bit technical, so just keep an eye on it. But I promise you, it's not as technical as you think it might be if you follow the step, if you follow it step by step. And the good news is I've developed a step-by-step file, and I've posted it on my website. You can just use it, follow it step by step, and you'll be able to send your app out for everyone to use. So I'm just going to start and see how we can do that. If you happen to have any question before that, let me know. If you don't have questions, then I can start right away. Questions in there, Raymond?
Nope.
Okay, so let's see how we can send our app out for individuals to see. The first step in doing this is you need to have Heroku, just like what I pointed out the last time. We need Heroku. This is for sure. You need Heroku to do this. And how does it work? You just click on this link. Because I already have my Heroku, just copy this link and go to either Google, Mozilla, or whatever browser that you have. Just type it in and you can create your own account here. So they will ask for a couple of details in terms of your maybe your credit card details, your user, your email address, and your password. So just give them. It's a very secured company. So don't be worried about it. Even if for the credit card, they will ask for it, but they are not going to charge you if you use the very basic apps. But if you want to go one step further and make sure that the individuals that you have using your app happen to be like a lot, then you might want to upgrade and have a more sophisticated version of it. But for now, a very simple app, you don't need to pay for it. It's just free. So you go here, you create your own account, and you are ready to start. After doing this, the next step here is for you to visit this link which is the same thing, related to Heroku again. And when you get here, you have to do one or two things. You have to install the Heroku CLI. And the commands happen to be here is very simple. You just click on this, guys. Either you are using Windows, Ubuntu, or Mac. It's very simple. You click on it, you install it. It's very simple to implement here. After installing this, the next thing you need to do here is to install Git or Git, as they might call it. Here, the link to this is either you use this guy or you use that guy. For those using Windows, you might just want to use this link that I provided on the notepad. Just click on it. It will just show up and it will ask you to download it. Just download it and make sure you have everything started. But the issue with Git is if this is your first time using it, there might be additional details that you might have to probably give. Not necessarily personal information, no, but in terms of getting you started, if this is your first time, the first setup, you need to follow a couple of commands here. It's self-explanatory, so just feel free to follow the commands here. So Git is not essentially important for us in terms of our app development, unless of course you happen to develop the app with someone and you guys are communicating in terms of changing one or two lines of code and making sure everything is consistent. Then that's where you might need the assistance of Git in getting this done in a proper way. But for now, we are not necessarily going to use Git, but we have to install it to get our app up and running. So if you're done with these three important steps, then everything is fine. If you already have an account, if you have your CLI running, if you have your Git running, then you are okay. The next line of code is now going to come from your PowerShell. So just keep an eye here. Everything is now going to come from your PowerShell. So I'm going to get my PowerShell up and running and get into Heroku, starting from line 3. I'm going to start from this. The first line of code that you need to use is you copy this guy here, which is Heroku login. So now that everything is set for you, we have to get our Heroku login. So you just copy it and come and paste it here. So that is to say that you want to start working within Heroku. You have your account, everything should be working fine. You click on this line of code, Heroku will ask you for your username and your password. If you click on this line of code, Heroku will ask you for your username and your password just to verify. So because I already have it, I will just copy my email address, copy this guy here, and paste it here. Now it will ask for my password. I will enter my password. I have it here. So it has now recognized me that indeed I'm Farouk Abdul-Salam and this is my email and everything is okay for me to start. So I've logged in into Heroku. What do I do next? Remember the Git that you installed. You just have to go copy it. Now come down here and paste it here. So the Git, I'm going to copy it again and paste it here. So if you're done, in getting into Heroku, the next thing is to get this Git guy up and running. Now, when you are done with that, you are now ready to create your new app, right? You are ready to create your new app. For me, I'm going to name my app Farouk Workshop App or Workshop App Farouk. If you happen to be Raymond, you might want to say Workshop App Raymond. If you happen to be Audrey, Workshop App Audrey. Any name that you might want to give it, provided the name hasn't been taken by anyone yet. If it's been taken, you realize that they'll give you an indication that this name is unique and you cannot use it. So given that we now have this line of code, which is basically Heroku creates, and the name of our app, I can now type Workshop App Farouk. Because I already have Farouk in my Heroku, so if you look at Heroku, I already have Farouk Workshop 1 or Farouk Workshop I have Farouk 1, I have Farouk here, so I'm going to name it Farouk 2 so that it wouldn't conflict with any name that I've already assigned here. So I'm going to name it as Workshop App Farouk, maybe 3, because 3 is now unique. So it's now going to create my app for me, so everything is okay. Now, the type of app that you have or the type of app that you are interested in using depends on how much money you have and what is your audience. So if you have a lot of audience using your app at the same time, you wouldn't want it to crash. You wouldn't want to lose any data. You wouldn't want the speed to be very low. So you might want to go into your Heroku and do a couple of updates. Add on new stuff like Redis and all that. But for this workshop, we are going to use a very basic part. So we're just going to use the hobby, which is the simplest and the freest version of all. So you come here, you copy this line of code, you go to your PowerShell, you paste it there. Now again, because I've changed the name to Farouk 3, I'll just make sure it's consistent again. Type in this guy. Again, it's creating it for me and hobby. So what I would like you guys to pay attention here is you realize that there is free given to us here. So that is to say, this app that I've created in Heroku comes at no cost for me. So it's going to be free. Now, what do I do next? I go to the next line of code and to see a couple of updates. So you have to update your oTree if you get here. So what do? You copy this line of code, which is pipe install oTree. You type it there. So everything is systematic as of now. Hopefully we wouldn't have any issue as we go along. So when you do that, the updates will be given and you see a very long line of code, and just don't be scared. It's just a way of updating whatever that you have over there. Now, the next line of code is to see the version of oTree that you are using. So you copy this guy, you put it here to see the version of oTree that you have. Now, this is going to be a bit complicated, so keep an eye on this. When you type this, it gives you a number, which gives you more or less like the oTree version that you are using, which is 3.0.4. This number is going to be very useful because you have to go into your workshop app, your workshop file, open this guy, then you open the requirements base. You have to open it up and see whether the number is consistent. So oTree version that we have here is 3.0.4. And that was the same version that was given to us here. So that means we are up to speed. If the numbers happen to be different, then you make sure that within your requirement base, you change it to the new number that was given to you in your PowerShell. Is that okay? If you have questions, feel free to ask. So this is pretty much systematic as we go along. So I made a point, I made a note here that whenever you finish running this guy, make sure you run into this to make sure you copy the number and get things running. Now, the next line of code here is also very important. This is not a code. This is going to be a file that you need. So for Heroku, it mostly runs with the most updated version of Python, if you are using Python to develop your app. So if you have a very old Python, it might not be able to run. So what you need is you need this special file, which I call runtime. So when you go to my website and you come down to second meeting, you see the file here, which is runtime. Just open it, copy it, make sure you copy it. It comes with a version of Python that we are using, and paste it in your workshop folder. So you paste it here. So please make sure you transfer this runtime to your folder as you start getting your app being deployed. So we are done with the runtime. We are done with the requirements base. The next thing we need to do here is the same Git, which we don't necessarily need, but we need to use as of now. So we go back here. The next line is the git add dot. There's going to be a dot here, so please keep an eye on the dot. You need the dot. So I'm going to get it here. Sorry, my PC is a bit slow. Let me copy it again, make sure I have it correct. Yeah, so make sure you have the dot because it's going to be very important. So when you do that, it comes like this. If this is your first time using deploying your app and using the Git, there might be some point in time where they will ask for your email address and your first name. So just make sure you give them the email address that is consistent with what you did in your setup. So the next line of code that we have here is just copy this guy, which is your Heroku Git remote workshop. And again, the name has to be Farouk, but with a 3 attached to it because of consistency in our app deployment. So I have this guy also given to me. Then you have git commit in terms of giving it a statement. So if, for instance, you are working with someone and you like to tell the person what you did differently, you might want to say, hey, Farouk, this is what I did at this point in time. But for now, your app is just by yourself, so you don't necessarily need much. So you just write this commandment in terms of making sure everything is okay. So we have this line of code also. So everything is okay. So what you tend to see here is we have 2 templates. We have everything running, right? The next line of code here is, yeah, so the next line of code here is sometimes when you have an app, just like the app that we developed. So let me quickly send you guys back to the app that we developed for this class. What you tend to see here is, I'm going to open it up. You see this guy here, which is the debug info, which is not necessary for us. We don't need this info. We don't need this debug info. So, and most importantly, it kind of confuses the user. So there's a need for us to hide this guy, take him somewhere, right? We don't want to see him. So in case you want to do that, then this line of code is very important. Heroku config set oTree production equals 1. So it takes away all the debug information. You wouldn't see all the debug infos again. So when you do this, this is what you have. Now, the next line of code, if you still want to do new stuff, in terms of making sure that all the data that you have from your app is secured, then you might want to use this additional line of code. So I'm going to use this guy here and type in this. So the password is just the password that I gave it, ZZZ. You might want to give it any password that you have. It's just the way of playing around with it. So now that we are done with these steps, now we are ready to get our app out. So we want to push it out. So we start by, we continue by typing git push Heroku master. If everything is fine, then they will tell us that everything is fine. If we have issues, then we have to go back and see what's going on and correct for it. But if everything is fine, which I hope it is, then we should be fine to continue. So if you're done with git push master, which is trying to get your app to Heroku, all the files and everything getting ready or getting set, then we can go to the next line of code. So let me see when it's done, then I can get the next line. So this might seem a lot, but trust me, it's not a lot when you just go with the stepwise approach that I have in this file. And the good news is I've already sent it out. So just don't feel intimidated by the volume of code that you need to put in your PowerShell to get it out. It's not as sophisticated as you think of it. So it's now launching. As you can see, it's launching our app. It's trying to deploy it to Heroku. If everything is fine, then it will tell us that it has been able to do that. If there is an issue, then we just quickly go back and fix it. So yeah, if you see this line of code, then you are almost there. This is very important. So you can see that the new branch master, everything is fine. Now, the next line of code here is, they might ask you whether you want to reset the database or not. If there are no questions, then we are okay. If there are questions, then we can reset the database. Yeah. So I'm going to run the next line of code, which will come with a question. So just keep an eye on this line of code. It comes with a specific question. Not this. I copied it, but it didn't show up. So let me just copy it again. This is where you reset your database. So this guy here, where you see Heroku run oTree reset DB, you are interested in resetting your database. Are you trying to change stuff in your, what do you call it, in your model? Are you trying to change the database as we pointed out? If yes, if you are truly sure, then you just type it. Now for Heroku to be sure as to what you are doing, it will ask you a question, whether indeed you want to do that, because this is very, very important. As you do this, you might lose some relevant information here and there. So it will ask you a question that, are you truly sure that what you just did, are you okay? Do you want to proceed? If the answer is yes, you type the small y. If the answer is no, you type the small n. So it is trying to get it for us. It is getting us the new table. It is getting us the admin. Everything looks fine now. So if we are done with this, the next line of code here is perhaps the last one, which is Heroku open. So now what you are going to do here is you want to open this app to see how it looks like. So you type in this guy, you press it. So you can see that it's now showing up automatically. It's just showing up. It's just popping up. So when I click on this guy, you can now see that I have my app ready to be sent out. I have my app ready to be sent out. So if you are interested in sending this app, one special link for every special participant, then you copy this link. I need Raymond to use this app only once. If that's the case, you copy this link and you send it to Raymond. I need Constantine to use this app only once. Then, because I've already given the first link to Raymond, I cannot give it again to Constantine. I now have to copy this link and give it to Constantine. The third person, I do the same. If you don't want to go through the trouble of sending individual links to individual participants, and remember we have 30 players here because in our setting, we said 30. That's a number of participants. So when you go back to your setting, just a quick one. If you go back to your setting, just like what we saw here, you realize that within your setting, you gave 30 players. So that's why we have 30 guys here. So let me quickly go to my setting and show you guys what I mean by that. So remember your settings, you said 30. That's the reason why we have 30 in here. So when you go back to your number of players, we have 30 players using it. In the situation where I'm not interested in sending special links to special players, I can just copy this link and send it out to everyone. So if no matter where you find yourself, you can use this link 30 times. But the trouble here is if you have an individual clicking on this link 30 times, the rest of the 29 wouldn't be able to use it. So just keep an eye on that. Even though it looks simple, but if you have an individual clicking on it 30 different times, then your app is off. You cannot get your app to the other 29. So let me copy this link and send it to our chat room and see whether we can use it. Raymond, where did we see the Zoom link again?
Sorry, where is the Zoom link?
Yeah, you showed me something the last time. I'm trying to get the Zoom up and running. Trying to send it to the chat room. Thank you.
Like to get it to the chat room, if you're sharing your screen, you just have to move your cursor to the top of your monitor, and it should hide, or it should drop down a tab.
Okay, let me see. Thing is, I don't know why it's just console. Okay. I don't know. I'm trying to send it out. Anyway, I'm going to send it to my website then, right? And then you can just have a look at it. Just try and then click on it and see how it looks like. So why not just go to my website and attach it to our page and publish it. And please just visit the website and just copy it. The Zoom is giving me some issues here. So let me just see what I can do here. Why not paste it on day 2 somewhere here? I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to publish this guy. So everyone can now go to the website and try it. So, or if you are not ready to use the website, why not just use mine? Show you guys what we will see. So when you click on this special link, okay, which is somewhere here. Let me get it. Okay. When you click on this link, you can now see that it's showing up. So here says for security reasons, this is not going to be displayed here because I've given it a password and all that. Or you might want to just go straight away and use what we have here. Click on this guy and see what it says oTree environment. So we need to reload this database because of the oTree. So we can just go ahead, change the oTree debug info, and it should work out. So please try this in case you are interested in sending your app out. What you need to do here in terms of not having the issue that we just encountered with regards to your oTree production, which is more or less like trying to take away the debug info, is just make sure you just hashtag this guy. You don't necessarily need it anyway. You just hashtag line 37 and just go ahead and deploy your app. It should be able to work. So I'm going to stop here. And if you have questions, please let me know. Is there anyone with any question in there? And this is how to deploy the app. Questions, guys? Constantine, Raymond?
No questions for me. Thanks.
Okay, sure.
Yes. So there's a question in the chat.
Sure, feel free.
Yui says, how do we make the decision one page link to the introduction page? When I click on the next button on the introduction page, it jumps to an error page saying finished, no more pages left to show.
Yeah, I think the reason why you see that is this guy, right? So within your page sequence, Yui, within your page sequence, there's a need for you to put this guy here, right? So your first page is where you have the individual giving his or her first name. Now the second page is where you have the individual giving his decision. So when you put in this guy, then that will be the next page. But if you don't put in this guy, then the app just finishes when the person give his first name. Questions? Questions? Okay, so we are done with the deployment of the app. We are done with the upgrade of the app to add additional page. So with this upgrade, it's very, very basic. What I'm going to introduce now here in terms of the upgrade of the app is going to be a bit sophisticated. So please keep an eye on this. This is where the idea that we develop on the first day in terms of having a function, in terms of having an input, in terms of having the results being shown to us, this is where we are going to properly use it. So just make sure you keep an eye on this. So what I'm going to introduce in here might be a bit sophisticated, but it's not as sophisticated as you might think of it. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes break. If you've not tried the app that we posted on my website, which was on the first day, which is, I believe, this app, please try and do it as we try and approach the, what I call the AI aspect. So try and use this app. Let's see whether we can get information, and let's see how consistent that will be with our AI. We'll start with the AI as well. So make sure you try it. And let's meet at around 7:43, if that's okay with everyone. We meet in about 8 minutes. Is that okay, guys? You can have a rest, then we can meet in 8 minutes. All good? If you have questions, let me know. If you don't, then we can meet in 8 minutes. Questions in there, Raymond? Constantine, questions in there? Okay. So we can meet in 8 minutes then. Okay. See you guys in 8 minutes. I'm going to resume the recording. So I'll start again by looking at where we need to proceed. This will be in line with the app development that we saw, but this might be a bit more of an upgrade. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to concentrate on this guy here. So going back to the app that we developed, and we promised to stick with it. Going back to that, the first page is okay now because we can now develop it. So I'm just going to put in my name again. So which is Abdul-Salam again. And we have the email address here, which is this guy here. So if that's okay, then we go to the next page. Now I'm going to concentrate my attention here. This guy here. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, let me share my screen then. Yeah, that's my bad. Yeah, thank you. Let me go up and get the screen up and running. Okay, let me see. Okay, good. Open Zoom. Okay. Yeah. Let me get myself in then. Yeah, so I think we are okay to start now. I guess so. Yeah. Can you guys see my screen now? Sorry. Can you see?
Screen is there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So let's see what, yeah. So we have this guy here. So I was trying to point out to the app that we tried to develop. So this was just this guy here. And I was trying to say that indeed we are done with this particular side of it. So coming back to the app that we had, we saw that we started with the introduction. So the introduction is just my name or any other person's name, and the email address, any email address that I intend to give. Now, what I want to concentrate on is on this guy. Okay, this is going to be very important because the information that has been given to us here is going to go a long way in determining what page comes up next. Okay, the information that you are about to give us is going to determine what's going to show up next. And in addition to that, is also going to determine what we try to sell to you. So in a situation where I choose quadratic as what I would like to use in terms of this app, and I choose the fact that I'm an economics student, and I choose the fact that job happens to be my most important concern, and I click on next, I for sure have to see a quadratic equation showing up. If the individual rather chose investment, then investment decision will show up. So this is going to be very, very important. And the second most important thing here is you realize that because the person chose job, we are showing the job advertisement. If the person should choose health, then we should show health advertisement. So this is a bit more sophisticated in terms of what we transfer between the pages to the pages, and in terms of what we transfer in terms of our Python code. So let's try and then start with the basics. So I'm going to use the app again, open this guy and go to the next page. So you realize that on this page, which happens to be the instruction page, we have three most important information needed. So when I'm interested in creating this page, the name of the page happens to be instruction. I go to the basics again. I hashtag this guy, decision. And the reason why I'm hashtagging decision is that I don't need decision anymore. If I need it, I'll keep it active. If I don't need it, I just hashtag it, because we are now interested in showing the introduction, then comes the instruction. So there's a need for us to get the instruction up and running just after the introduction. And this is very important given what we asked in terms of the page sequence. So we know that there is supposed to be an instruction page showing up. How does it show? How should it show up? I have a very simple template in terms of the pages. So I can just copy this guy and paste him here. But the most important thing here is the name should not be introduction. It now has to contain the name needed, and that has to be instruction, consistent with this guy here. Now what comes next is going to be very, very important, and it starts from here. We don't need this guy. We don't need this guy. What we need is we need to get the person's decision whether he's interested in choosing quadratic or investment. We also need another field which takes care of the fact that is the person interested in economics or other. And lastly, we also need a field that indicates whether the person needs job or health. So if you go to your form field, it means we need three most important fields to fill. So this is more or less like the skeleton that is needed for the instruction page. And as I pointed out, we always start from the model. But now we are okay with this just to show that indeed we know what to put here whenever we want to add a new page. So let's go to the basis again for the models. So I come to the models, and this is where I think you guys should pause and ask questions if you have any. And I'm going to put in these guys here. I'll share this file with you, and I'll tell you the rationale behind each and every line of code that I have here. So I'm going to copy this guy and show you how different this is with regards to what we just did in the decision page. So I'm going to copy him, go back to the models, and put in this guy here. How different is this guy to the decision page first? And how different is it with regards to the page that we tend to show up second? So I will discuss it in details. And again, please make sure you ask questions if it so happens that there's a need for a question. Now, the very first thing that you tend to realize here is this is the field that is needed, right? It is coming from the player, and it is an app choice. In the situation where we had the first page, which happens to be the introduction, we only needed the name and then the initial. With this new page coming from the instruction, we need this guy here. That is the choice of app. So I copy this guy nicely, Then again, you know we have to transfer it to the pages. And I come here and I put it here, because that is a field that is needed, right? I go back again. Remember, we also asked for the person's educational background, and we had to put it in the models. And if you have it in the models, we have to transfer it to the pages. Again, I capture it, I put it to the pages. And lastly, if you go to the template, we had a question as to what is his concern as of now. So I go back to the models, I pick the concern, just like what I have here, I copy it, and I put it here. So the three most important questions in terms of the field has been captured. So with regards to the pages, everything is okay. We are done with it. There is no issue with the pages because we've captured the instruction, we've captured the sequence that we needed to appear, and we've captured whether it's a player form or whatnot. So this is okay. Now, where the problem will be coming from is this guy here. You realize that within this guy, I'm writing constant dot economics, and this is going to be very, very key. The reason why I have this guy is, or let's start from the app choice. You realize that I've written constant dot quadratic, and I've written constant dot investment, and this wasn't the case when I asked the individual whether he wanted a fixed income or whether he wanted a random income from the first page that we created today. So just keep an eye on this guy. Here, what I'm doing here is I'm moving the idea that we have here in terms of the decision. I'm transferring it from a usual decision to something that we call a numeric. And why is that necessary? It's necessary because when the individual presses this, it will determine the page that comes next. So there's a need for me to transform the answer that he gives in terms of whether he wants to go with a quadratic decision or whether he wants to go with an investment decision to more or less like a constant. And if I get it in terms of constant, then I can use a loop to get the page that I need. If I don't have it in terms of constant, then it might be difficult for me to use a loop to show the next most important page after this page. So I'm going to pause here. If you have questions, let me know. Questions? Questions? Raymond?
There's no questions in the chat yet.
Okay. And you don't have one either, I believe, Raymond?
I don't have any questions. Yep.
Good. So if that's the case, the same idea, applies here. I asked whether the person is interested in economics or is interested in other, or the field happens to be other field. If it is other field, it counts with its own implication. And lastly, in terms of the jobs, it also has its own implication. So because I assign constants to it, it means I need to tell Python what constant will imply in that respect. So I'll share this file with you. If you come up here, you realize that I've given one for the case where you happen to choose. So these are the constants that has been transferred from the player to the constant, and it will now be used to determine the next page to show up. So when the individual chooses quadratic as the app that he's interested in using, I'll assign down a constant of 1. If he chooses investment as the decision to make next, then I'll assign it as investment equals 2. You can choose any number at all, it doesn't matter. In terms of the economics and other, the same thing happens. In terms of the job and health, the same thing happens. So we are done capturing this guy here. Now, why not go to the next page? So we are done with the models. We are done with the pages. Now, why not add the next page, which is the instruction? And this happens to be the usual thing that we've been doing the whole of today. So whenever you have your models and you have your pages set, then you are ready to introduce in the new idea, which is your HTML file. And because we label this guy here to be instruction, I need to come here and label this guy as instruction as well. So I copy this guy, I name it, I paste it here. Because I already have my template, I can just go ahead. Where's my instruction page? I can just go ahead and use my template for the instruction. So I have it here. I'm going to make it available to you guys. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it back to the pages. So I have the pages here. So remember, the same idea holds. Models contains these three most important information: the choice of app, the educational background, and the consent. And that was transferred to the pages. And lastly, it will be transferred to the HTML file, which is the choice of app, because it's a player dot choice of app, player dot education, and player dot consent. Is that okay for everyone? Questions? If you have any, please let me know. So we have this page, which is equally set for us. The next line of code is maybe for you to just go down here. Then again, just use your oTree dev server to develop your server and see what the next page is. If everything is fine, then it should work. If there's an issue, then it will tell you there's an issue. So it seems like everything is okay, and then we are ready to see the improvement that we've done. We just finished making to this app. So let me click this guy, let me up them, and introduce in this new guy and see what we have here. So I copy this guy, I paste it here. We now have the pages to show up. Again, this is the intro. Then comes these three guys here. So when you have to click, either you want to go with quadratic, economics, and job, just like what you saw earlier, it will just go like the pages is done. And that is true because of our page sequence. Our page sequence just added this new page, and that's the end of it. Now we go one step up. And this step is where the Python is going to help us a lot in terms of our computational dynamics. So I'm just going to delete this guy and go to the next most important page after instruction. You might want to show us the results that we expect to see, because this individual made the decision as to whether he wants to go with a quadratic choice or investment choice. So the next page should either be a quadratic choice or investment choice. So I'm going to show you guys how it's going to look like. Just give me a second and let me get the that page up and running. Yeah. So I'm going to get the page up and running, and this is where the Python is going to come in a lot. So I'm going to copy this guy here, which is the combination of the two. Okay. Okay. It's not going to be read. Okay. I'm going to copy this guy here, which is the combination of the two, and keep your eye on what I'm about to do. This is the two new pages that I'm going to have. And again, given what we saw on Monday, this has to just be player. And given what we saw on Monday, this has to just be a player. We don't necessarily have to do a models of it again. So I'm done with the instruction page. Now, based on the decision that he or she will make here, the next page will show up. It is either a quadratic page where you come in with your quadratic decision, or the next page is going to be an investment decision. So just keep your eye on this. So these are the two upcoming pages that you expect to see from the app. And for the quadratic page, for sure, as we saw, you have to put whether you have x squared, b, and that. So that's why we have this inputs here. So I believe everyone should be fine with the form filled now. So when the person is about to use the quadratic page, he has to give us his a coefficient, he has to give us his b coefficient, he has to give us his c coefficient. So this should be fine for us. Now, what I would like you guys to pay attention to is this line of code. This function, what it does is, it displays a page for the user. Now, on what basis should it display the page? It should display the page if and only if the person chose an app choice that was equal to quadratic, right? So you only see the quadratic page if indeed this logic is true. If it is not true, you wouldn't see this quadratic page. That's the reason why I try as much as possible to change the decisions that you see here from the usual yes or no, quadratic or not quadratic, to constant, then transfer them to this side, then finally transfer them to the pages, because I can use a logic based on that to display a page for the user. Is that okay? Constantine, Raymond, questions? Questions?
No questions for me. Don't see any in the chat yet.
Okay. Now let's go to the next line of code. So if this is what the page will display for the individual who chose quadratic, then the next page, this guy here, this page, which is the input for the investment, will display a page for anyone who chose investment, which was equal to maybe 2 for the constant. So this will be the new page for the investment guys, and this will be the form field for the investment guys as well, because he has to come in and give us his principal, he has to come in and give us his interest rate, he has to come in and give us his maturity. And the function, I'll come back to the function really quick. So let's go to the case of the quadratic. So the quadratic is very simple to see. So we have this guy here. If indeed this is the case, this will be shown to the person who chose quadratic. Now, the next thing that you might find interesting is, not only did the person choose quadratic in terms of the app, if the person chose economics and job, we have something to sell to him. And that can be captured here. So if, this is the additional display page, if the person indeed said that his concern was job and his education was economics, then the return function should return this guy for us. It should return, please sign up for the upcoming job. But should the person choose quadratic and choose issues like other and health, then given our understanding of Python, we can create our own if and else command, and that's what we see here. Else, if the person chose health or other, and this is the long line of conditions that you might want to play along with, then we should come up with a new sales product, which is we have a max for sale for you because the person said he's interested in health. So this is how we sell the product to the person. Now the same idea holds. If the person should choose investment, but ends up choosing economics and job, the same arguments. So within this field, if the person chose investment, which is here, we've already captured that. So this will be the page that will be displayed. Then we would like to return this guy here, which is sign up for the upcoming job fair. And if the person said health or other reasons happens to be his major concern, then we would like to sell a face mask for him. So it will return this guy. So these are the two new pages that have been added, which is the input quadratic wherein the person will now see his input quadratic, asking him to input his information for the quadratic equation, or there is input investment, where the person will now come in and we will ask him to input his investment page. And either of the two should come up with its own marketing product due to this line of code and due to this line of code. So we are done with how to get the marketing. If you have any other way of selling a new product, you can just put it here. Now, as we said, because these guys happens to be a new field for us, we already have them somewhere here. So there's a need for us to input in this additional field. So for the quadratic page that we just created, we need to have these 3 new fields. So if you are, I already have them here, I'm just going to copy them and paste them. So for the individual choosing quadratic, these are the new form fields that should come with it. So if you come here, just a quick one, go to the models, and for sure we need to have these guys ready, right? So I'm just going to put them here. So these are the fields for anyone who chooses quadratic. And anyone who chooses the investment, remember the field that comes with it. Again, it happens to be principal and the time and the interest rate. So I'm going to copy this guy and I'm going to paste them somewhere here. But it should be indented as expected. So we have these fields given to us. We have that field given to us. Now everything is up and running. If you have questions, let me know. And again, within the field, you can see that I'm giving it a further information, as in what the maximum principal should be, what the maximum interest rate should be, and what the minimum should be. The minimum interest rate is 0, and the maximum should be 1. It shouldn't go past 1. Just like what we saw on the first day. When it goes past 1, then it's more or less like a Ponzi scheme, and that wouldn't make sense. So that's why we limit the input to 0 and 1. So we have these fields, we have the pages, we have the instruction, which is, of course, we've already dealt with it. So if you are done with these 2 additional pages, the next most important thing you need to do here is, for sure, add the HTML file, because we now need a new HTML file for the input quadratic. And at the same time, we need one for the input investment. And how does it work? It works in a very simple way. You right click on the HTML file, you add the HTML file. And again, because we've already given it a special name, we need to stick with the name. So when I just go to my pages, I already have them. So I just copy it from here, input quadratic, copy it, go to my interface, and I input it here. I also need to have input investment, because this is an additional page as well. I come down here, I copy it nicely, input investment, I have it captured. So I go to my interface, I put it here, and I paste it. So I now have these 2 important HTML documents which are needed, given the fact that we've added these 2 new pages. Now, in terms of what to do here, I already have them captured, so I'm just going to copy them and paste them and tell you what happens to be in each, which is consistent with what we have. So why not? So why not just open it up? I have it somewhere here. We have the input quadratic and input investment. So I open the input. So let me close it and get a new one. Sorry. Let me open it with HTML with Notepad. So I have my input quadratic, copy it, go to my HTML page and paste it. So I have this guy up and running. Everything is okay here. I also need for the data for the input investment. Again, I come in here, I right click on it, I open it with Notepad, I copy it, I go down here, I paste it. So these are the additional pages that have been added. And again, the most important thing here is when you come to the investment page, remember the form field for the investment, you have 3 key things: the principal, the interest rates, and the maturity. So when you come in here for the investment, you should have the principal, you should have the interest rate, and you should have the maturity. The same thing applies for the quadratic. You have the A coefficient, the B coefficient, and then the C coefficient. So this should be okay. And we can now go to our partial and do oTree develop server, because we've now changed, we've now added additional pages and additional form fields. So if everything is okay, it should run as expected with a special code for us. So why not copy this guy nicely and see what to expect when I open it up in my browser. So I open it in my browser. Yeah, I put it here. Let's see what comes out of it. So this is my workshop app, which I just finished upgrading. The same thing, the following, my name, my email address. Now it asks for my decision to use which app. It asks for my background, and it asks for my concern as of this COVID era. When I click next, you can clearly see that my name has been given, and the page that showed up was the quadratic page, which is consistent. If I go back again and I open another link and I try this app again, but this time round, if I'm interested in using the investment decision and saying that I have other concern in terms of health, then the next page should be an investment decision, and you can see the marketing decision that we indicated earlier is showing up here. So keep an eye here. If I put in any amount of principal, it's fine. But the interest rate, imagine I put an interest rate that is maybe 500. Let's take 500 for instance, and how long I would like to keep it. Look, see what comes up here. You can clearly see that I cannot move to the next page because the interest rates cannot go past 1. And that was the further indication that I did here. So anyone who places something beyond, below, or above this number will not be able to compute. It has to be consistent. That's why when you try to click next, this is what's showing up. If you put 0.1, then you can go to the next page, and that's the end of it. So this is how to develop your app in terms of the data needed and in terms of how to compute it. The next thing that we'll be doing on Friday is to finally see the results of whatever we do. So for instance, if the person uses the investment app, what results are we supposed to see and how is it going to show up? If the person uses the quadratic app, what results are we going to see and how is it going to show up? So that will be our next line of action. So I'm going to pause here. If you have questions, please let me know. If you don't have questions, we can now start thinking about how to get our AI up and running. That's our artificial intelligence individual. Is there anyone with any question in there? I'll try and upload all the other files for today. Try and then use it. See whether you can upgrade this app, change it to your own format, and see how it works out. Constantine, Raymond, is there anyone with any question in there?
Nope, no questions.
So one important thing before we move on to the AI is this guy here. When you are interested in transferring data from your pages to this guy here, what you need to understand here is you can see that this is the information that I wanted to be displayed. But in terms of assignments, I've assigned it as A. So when you go to the pages, for instance, and you want to see how it was transferred, instead of saying constant.player or constant.something, you just put the curly bracket and put A in there. The statement will show up by itself, which is this entire statement here will be shown here when you open the HTML file on the web interface. So let me know if you have questions. If you don't, then I'll just quickly show you guys what I did in terms of the AI and see whether you guys agree with it. If you agree with it, then we can build up on it on Friday, okay? And I've posted my code online with regards to the AI as well. So let's see how the AI works, what I indicated. In terms of the AI, the story still remains the same. I hope we've tried it. I'll try and look at the data that I have to see whether it will be consistent with the AI that we develop. So the larger the participants, the more accurate the results that we might see. So let me quickly go back to the app again and show you guys what I intend to do with the AI. So this is my name. This is my email address. We can now go to the next page. This is the app that we created earlier. We can just use anything. It doesn't really matter. It will sell the product for us. We don't really, we don't care about this, guys. What I care about is the decision from page, from this page to the last page. Here, the story is that an individual is being promised a constant amount of money, which is 100, compared to him or her having 50 to 150. How is the individual going to play? So my line of thinking is that we have two types of individuals, and that's how that will be the basis of my AI. I believe that we have two types of individuals. The very first individual is an individual who does not think in terms of random. He always prefers to go with fixed. And we have the second individual who always comes in and he always prefers going with random. So these are the two types of individuals that I propose that we might have in an economy. Now, if that is the case, how are they going to play? So if this is the first round and an individual happens to be an individual who always thinks in terms of only random, is he going to be random till the end of the full decision-making process, or is he going to change his mind as he goes along? My proposal here is an individual who chooses random and comes with a random decision might want to change his mind based on one or two decisions. And how is it going to play out? So if I happen to be a random type and I click random, my AI says that if indeed I happen to be a random guy and my random amount happens to be higher than the fixed amount that was proposed, then I'll continue on with my random decision making. So if, for instance, in this page, the random gave me 139 and the fixed gave me 100, then I'm more comfortable to go with the random, because as a random guy, I chose random and the random gave me higher fee compared to the fixed. So I still go with my random. So I click on the next page. They ask me the same decision for the next page. I go like, hey, I'm a random guy. The first page gave me random. I'm still going to go with random. So I click on random. I go to the next. This place is very, very tricky. As a random guy, I nearly missed out. Even though the random gave me 100.96 and the fixed gave me 100, I'm now going to be a bit more careful. But I still believe that the random is going to do well. So I still go with random because random gave me more. So that's my thought in terms of an AI. So the third round, I'll go with random again. I click on random, now see what happens. The fixed would have given me 100, but the random just gave me 87. Now, as a developer or as an economist, how will I propose this guy's behavior given this result? Now, I propose that he will start thinking in terms of fixed, given the probabilities. So given that this guy would have given him a higher fee compared to his random decision, he now forms a new thinking plan. And with this new thinking plan, it's basically saying that I'm just going to add the 100 to the 150, form a probability or form a ratio, and I will think in terms of the ratio. So the next time around, if you take the ratio of this guy out of the total of the combination of these two, he might most likely go with the fixed because the chances of getting higher payment in the fixed is high for him. So he might want to reformulate his thoughts based on this decision. So he goes to the next page, and he might want to go with the fixed at this stage. He goes, he sees this result, and that's the end of it. And here you can see that the fixed is giving him even higher, and it has confirmed his line of thinking. These numbers are random. These numbers are not chosen by me. They are just chosen by the random function in Python. So this is how I propose that the individual will play his game, and this will be the end of the game. Now, if this is my line of thought, if anyone has any question, just let me know. How can I put this guy in Python, run it, and see the results? And that's what I'm going to do today. I'll give you guys the basis of it today. Then we talk more on it on Friday in terms of the AI. So let me just open the page, and I have already uploaded the file on my website. You can have a look at it. If you think it's not as consistent as you might want to think of it, please let me know. So this is my proposal. This is how I think the AI is going to play out. So let's keep in mind the story. So I say that randomly we generate two types of individual: an individual who always thinks in terms of random, and an individual who always thinks in terms of fixed. And for now, these numbers are just given, I'm just giving 50-50% chance. So 50% chance you are random, 50% chance you are a fixed. So at the end of the day, we have 100%. So that's okay. How many players am I proposing? Just to keep everything simple, I'm proposing 10 players. So it might be the case that with 50% chance, I have 5 players. With 50% chance, I have 5 fixed players. So this is what the first line of code is doing. Now, this guy here, which is the number of rounds, we happen to have 4 decision-making process. So it's just going to be 4 decision-making process, nothing more, nothing less. Now, this guy here is going to be the probability. This function here is going to give us the probability that we are going to use. So keep an eye on this function, try and play around with it. Take away the hashtag and see what the print option is giving you. Hopefully on Friday, I'll explain it in detail, or I'll try and post a video and explain what the function is doing. This function here is trying to generate the type. So 50% chance I have the fixed type, 50% I have the random type. As an AI, that's my line of thinking. And then I generate them. So this line of code is still consistent. I get the number of players, that's just fine. The strategies, how do they play? Now, this is where you might start picking up what I'm trying to do. So in the situation where I try to pick a random guy, this is a function that will try and pick a random guy. So when I pick you as a random, your probability of playing fixed is 0, because you don't consider fixed in any way. You always consider random to be 1. So in the case of a random guy, he always goes for 1 for sure and 0 otherwise. In the case where I pick a fixed guy, these are his strategies. Whenever he sees fixed, he's going to go for it 100%. And whenever he sees random, he's not going to go for it. So these are the 2 types that I proposed earlier, and this is how they are going to look like. Now, in terms of the selection of play, so this is also related to the probability function. So just keep an eye on it, and I'll explain it more on Friday. And this is how you probably try and play along with the functions, see how they look like and all that. Friday, we talk more about it, now that we are trying to develop our own concept. If you have a different concept as well, just let me know. We can develop a naive AI to go with that as well. In terms of the profits, how they calculate their profit, this is how they calculate their profits, and this is how they assign their probability. So with a certain amount of chance, it goes like, hey, this is too little, or this is too high, and all that. So this is going to be what to expect when you run this function. So let me quickly open the more advanced version, which is just the same as this. and just run it, and let's see the outcome, and let's define the graph as well. So I'm going to open this guy here. I believe this is the code, naive AI. The same line of code, nothing has changed, and we plot their decision making across time. So I'm going to copy it and run it, and let's see what comes out of it. I'm going to show you guys the graph and see whether the data that we saw with our app is consistent with this AI. If it's not consistent, you can think of another way of looking at it, and we can improve upon it. So my code is running, and this is my proposal. So now we have the prediction from the AI. What is the prediction? The prediction here, you see 3 types of decision-making process. This is the total number of fixed people who will make a fixed decision till the end. This is the amount of random guys that were chosen initially, and this is the amount of fixed guys that were chosen initially. That's a green line. So initially, 3 people happen to be fixed. Then, as the time goes on, they will try. The fixed guys are now reducing. They are taking away their decision from fixed to random, So you can see that the number of fixed guys are now dropping up onto 0. So no, out of the fixed guys, they are changing their decision to random, whilst the random guys are increasing, but they are not increasing much. Only one person changed his mind from random to fixed, and that's just the end of the story. So this is how to understand the AI. Now, will this be consistent when I plot the graph from our app? That would be the question for Friday. Are the two going to be consistent? How close are they going to be? How far are they going to be from each other? And if they are far from each other, how can we improve it? So this is where grid search comes in and all that. But given that our workshop is just related to something very, very simple, this naive AI will be good for now. So if you want to see more of the grid search and more of the genetic algorithm, which is more of a sophisticated version of an AI or algorithm, then you can have a look at my website. I have a couple of them in there. So if you have questions, please let me know. If not, hopefully I'll meet you guys on Friday. Raymond, questions? So this guy has been posted on the website. You can have a look at it, and I'll explain it further on Friday. Raymond, questions?
No questions.
Okay. So is it okay to meet on Friday then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, and I'll send all the files that you need to finish this up. I'll send everything out now, given that we've tried our best to do 1 or 2 things. My hope is that if I give you the files now, all the complete files, you can now finish it up and try and send it out to your participant to try. Okay. If you have issues with it, just let me know. So I'm just going to post it very soon on the website somewhere here, and you can just keep on downloading them and fixing them where you need to, and just make sure you understand those lines of code in terms of the functions and all that. And if you have issues Friday, just shoot me an email and we can have a look at it. If Tori happens to be around, I can also have a look at your oTree, hopefully tomorrow, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay to meet tomorrow.
Okay, sure. So
I'll send you an email.
Okay, sure. Feel free. Okay. Okay, then see you guys on Friday, and thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Farouk.
Welcome.